Okay, so I think we're going to start just because we have a um, presentation that's about 45 minutes. So I'm sure that everyone else will be looking at the people who will be joining us today and letting them into the room. But let's start. I think everyone who is presenting today is also here, as you will not just be hearing from me. So let me introduce myself first, then I'll tell you something about the college-wide Research Vision Initiative, and then my colleagues and I will present to you our activities through today that we have been engaged with. So the college-wide Research Vision Initiative started a few years ago as a way to invest in interdisciplinary and transformative cutting-edge research here at City College. Our team, which came together because of that initiative under the banner of climate solidarity, was the winning team. And we've been working ever since under the title of Energizing Equity, co-creating scalable urban resilience via climate solidarity. So who are we? Our team is an interdisciplinary group of scientists, engineers, and designers across 3 divisions and schools of the City College of New York. We're brought together by our research expertise in climate science and environmental justice and our commitment to an environmentally just future. So today's presentation will cover our activities for year 1 and the first 6 months of year 2. And we are very excited to be doing this second annual presentation to show you what we have accomplished over the last year or so. Our team's framing question challenges us to imagine if solidarity surrounding climate actions were leveraged to reimagine and co-create a future for New York City. We see the climate crisis as an opportunity to reimagine urban futures, and the ultimate goal of our collaboration is to bridge gaps between data and design, analysis and action, top-down visions, and bottom-up efforts in order to establish actionable plans to adapt for the changing climate. Our project has 6 main objectives. Each of these objectives helps us to pioneer a new interdisciplinary approach to convergent science that combines urban design, engineering, computer science, and sociology frameworks to co-create actionable climate solutions with community leadership and input. We break silos across public agencies, community organizations, and academia to promote student engagement and leadership. We will first introduce our web portal, which we launched last summer. You can just type in climatesolidarity.nyc to get to our portal, but this portal facilitates the distribution of our research outcomes for knowledge co-creation with our community partners. After a year of collaboration and brainstorming in weekly subgroup meetings and monthly O-group meetings, we have further developed our conceptual frame for the CRV initiative and its public-facing web platform. So our group is focusing on interdisciplinary research and community engagement under 4 themes of housing, energy, food, and environments. So over the next few slides, we will guide you through an example of one of our main focus areas, which is our focus on housing. And I am going to give you a link in the chat to the visualizations that are on this slide. We will go through the first visualization in the interest of time. So this example combines our public-facing web portal visualization with convergent academic work in the areas of sociology, climate science, and geography with web-based solutions that with design-based solutions that take our academic findings to local communities. Okay. This is a video of what our interactive visualization on housing and climate change looks like. We're now zooming in on East Harlem. Using this interactive visualization, community members who live in affordable housing across New York City can find their individual apartment building and see if that building is, for example, in a flood zone, in an area close to polluting industries, in an area with higher concentrations of PM 2.5, or an area with low vegetation cover. As part of the public-facing web portal visualization, we have produced an analysis of the risk of flooding to affordable housing in New York City, which is pipelined as an academic article in a housing policy journal. What we find is that the location of existing subsidized housing for low-income households in New York City exposes those least likely to be able to evacuate during an emergency or recover from an emergency to the highest potential flood risk. The flood risk to the most vulnerable communities, coupled with the already staggering maintenance costs faced by NYCHA and fiscal pressures to convert subsidized housing to market rate units, forebode a future where New York City might lose a substantial portion of its affordable housing for the lowest income families. Our work demands urgent policy discussions of how to protect the most vulnerable and their housing units from the ravages of climate change. Therefore, we have already started working on adaptive future planning solutions. And next here, I will introduce to you Dr. Zhang from the Architecture School, who will tell us about a design experiment for East Harlem.
Thanks, Yana, for the nice framing. Can you hear me? Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
You're great.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So as Yana mentioned, all of those research in sociology started to contribute to the what I call design research in architecture school. Specifically in this case, to look at urban landscape. In this case, we started to visualize how these NYCHA campuses will change in considering sea level rise and future flood zone. And if you can go to next slide. and you can just, jump through these slides. They are kind of all as a sequential. So we started to look at different solutions to retrofit these NYCHA buildings, which are built in the same area, and almost like the same kind of typology, which is a tower in a park kind of a typology. And all of this work, yeah, next slide. So all of this work led to our almost like a vision plan, but proposal that we presented at the TRB meeting. TRB stands for Transportation Research Board, which is the largest meeting for transportation and transportation in the field of transportation, and we presented this work at a poster session, and people start to talk to people about this idea, and through this meeting, we started to make connections with NYC DOT and also New York State DOT. In this case, because it's transportation related, we started to thinking about how what is it called? FDR drive can be potentially raised to function as a dike that protect the inland area. That's why we call it East Harlem polder. And polder is something, the Dutch a coastal engineering term, basically a low-lying area that is even below water, but somehow protected by a series of dikes. And the water are pumped out constantly. So the challenge here is really to the goal here is really to render this vision for an alternative future, because if you think about the next phase of New York City climate adaptation, right now we know the Lower East Side has the East River Resilient Plan, and if we think about where the next area is, it's probably going to be East Harlem. That's why we start to really focus on this area and provide alternatives to avoid some of the, I guess, the fiasco. What it happened in Lower East Side, where community is not happy with this kind of top-down solution. Okay, that's my part, and those are just in order to that's the poster we produced, and in order to create conversation, we also really focus on our branding in a sense, on creating this kind of little zines so that we can distribute and sort of spread out these ideas through multimedia, and there's of course QR code on the zines where people can just scan and go to our website. So we started to really utilizing the website we created in the first year, started to brand our research and brand our group, and making people know and aware that there's a group of us at City College that works on climate justice issue, and making this group known to New York City communities and organizations. And that's it. That's this slide. And next, yeah, that's my part.
Thanks, Zihao. You'll be coming back on later under this objective as well. So under objective 2, our team is working on 7 interdisciplinary strands of inquiry. We already gave you a preview of the first 3 as examples under objective 1, and welcome questions about them in the Q&A. Now I'd like to introduce you to my colleague in architecture, Professor Rickenbacker, who is going to tell us about a new equitable development index that is coming out of our work.
Yeah, thank you, Yana. Hello, everyone. So just to describe in this sub-objective 2.4, and it's also related to other objectives, perhaps even in the housing category, but this Equitable Development Index is something that covers a lot of territory with regards to indexing in a kind of metric fashion, the contributing inputs that will guide future decision-making around affordable housing in particular, but also environmental impact and energy demands. And how this works, it's built off of an existing process in the city, which is called ULURP. This is the Uniform Land Review Procedure. Currently, this process relies heavily on environmental impact studies provided by the group and/or developer seeking a land review and exceptions in how large and what exactly they might be building on New York City's within New York City's zoning and codes throughout various neighborhoods throughout the city. Currently, this process struggles because of a lack of information, particularly as it pertains to those with voting actions on this, and this is primarily community boards. So in collaboration with community boards 9, 10, and 12, and more recently, city agencies and members of the city council planning team, we have embarked upon this process doing and providing a workflow demo of how this tool would work. It relies heavily on publicly available data, primarily from the city. It also takes into account via a community survey, communities' priorities as they are described individually from community board to community board. These are entered into an algorithm that uses historical data on projects that have ranked both high and low in this very same process. Particular metric selections are made. For example, mixed income, which would suggest some affordability, community space, economic possibilities, retail, and so forth. Those metrics are then weighted against what the project is offering, and ultimately the index provides a score which also provides for an understanding of the transparent inputs that contribute to that score. In that last column under Calculate Equity, we have successfully run this model with existing projects that have all gone through the ULUP process and have compared that against some of the criteria established by communities in relationship to those projects. Maybe next slide, Yana. So the sub-objective, again, it is focused on environment and housing. It's important to cite that in the way that we see this in the CRV is that housing density and seeking higher density in urban settings is in fact a response to climate change. And in doing this, we focus on the equitable distribution of resources that's concerned again with housing, environment, and energy. So what you're looking at here, again, is a repeat of how the score may look in terms of the dashboard. You can choose individual properties to do a lot analysis, which is the map view below that. This gives you some demographic data, both physical and social, in terms of street width, poverty level, transit scores, vacancy, etc. The top right slide indicates at pretty granular level what are the unit counts that a particular project might have within it. What are the ULUP requests? So what is the requested actions that the developer might be seeking, and public space as another component to that index, as well as commercial space. The importance of this tool is that, again, we find that within the city's current process, and this has been confirmed by city council members and the council itself, that the objectivity is lacking. And so we believe that this tool in particular, which can address important aspects such as resilience if it's near the coastline, if the project is near the coastline, or if it's in a floodplain, those factors would be introduced into this tool in a more objective way by which both community can understand what's at stake. And perhaps through this tool, we can see more development particularly in the realm of affordable housing, again, that has a more fair distribution of the city's resources and programs to have those developments achieved and get those products safely and environmentally sound out to the larger New York City community. So I think I'll stop there and continue through. Thank you, Yana.
Thanks, Sean. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Zhu from the Computer Science Department on another interdisciplinary project, which is in the area of computer vision, AI, and housing and energy.
Great, thank you, and thank you, everyone. So we are talking about using AI to solve the real-world problems we just discussed: energy, climate, and equity, housing, etc. So here are three things that we're looking into. The first thing is the data. What kind of data we need? What kind of data we have? What kind of data we need to collect? So the second thing is the analytics. What we are going to do with the data. The third thing is about, with all this data processing, blah, 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 application, how we put things together. I called it a framework, it's called convergence framework. So it's naturally fit into this CRV program. And we are going to go beyond the CRV, go out there. That you see here, we look into the National Science Foundation growing convergence research program. We want to kind of see our framework there to see we get support to do more work, further research. So come back to this data and analytics. We first look into the New York City open data for energy and water disclosure. So we look into the, every building have address, electricity use, the property, gross floor area, natural gas use, occupancy, like more than 100 items collected. We look into this data, we analyze the data, we look into the correlation of the data for building energy efficiency. We use a score for A, B, C, D, 4 levels. So we see how much we can do with the data. And then, when we talk with the groups, we feel like only this data, there are some missing data, some data are not accurate. Then we have the buildings there. So people found that the building facade, building types, and other information could contribute to the energy use. So what we do is that we just use the address, use the location of the building, we find the image, which is also in open data, the Google Street View. We collect the data automatically, and we crop the facade, based on the information, the street, facing street, and also the size of the building and other information, we get it automatically there. And, eventually we are going to remove the occlusion, analyze everything. We find one thing here now is the building facade window to wall ratio, which I believe people said that is important. We tested it out. So those are the data we collected. So far, it's the early stage for the second year. We got a paper published there, which is pretty interesting. We collect the data. It's called creating and analyzing the multimedia data set with the images and the tabular data. So we have like 3 categories: the housing, multi-family housing, the schools, and the office buildings. We collect each of them with 1,000 buildings. Building means they have images. We could have much more, like hundreds, thousands of images, all this, but we want to give a test first. So with that, we do analysis, we do feature extraction, we do classification. We also integrate the images. We detect the building facade, the windows, the building facade, and calculate the window wall ratio. And with all this, we put things together, get it into the deep learning model to see how the performance goes, right? So far, I think the early study in the paper saying that it's about 60% accuracy. But later on, I say we only use 12 features, what's believed to be the best features. But later on, we look into all these things, we dig into the data, find that we can use more data, more like data items. There are like 100 of them. We found that we can get a much better performance. But still now is the early stage. We the window wall ratio thing on the facade on the front end, the front side, right, is not sufficient. So that's where we start the project. We are going to move on to see if we can develop a framework to integrate everything else, includes the domain knowledges, the designs, the usage of the housing and other information, as well as the climate factor that we could measure, the sensory data. So that we are now working on this convergence approach. It's called the convergence approach for AI-enabled urban social environmental ecosystem. Put it short is COS. So we will see how we can get it together nicely. Put all these 3 layers model from applications to the domains to the architecture, computation architecture, so that we can get the job done. Okay, that's it.
So sorry, I jumped a little.
Yeah, we are good. We are good. Okay.
Now we're going to go back to Thea, who's going to tell us about some other educational activities within this domain.
Yeah, I'll speak just briefly. So one area, the convergence area here is really around generative AI. Since we have computer scientists on the team, and we started to look at how generative AI can be used in design. And generative AI, you probably already use ChatGPT a lot, but for image generation, we have other AI, generative AI tools like Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. So this was one workshop I did with over last summer, in collaboration with CCNY STEM Institute. We tested this workflow, allow the students, K-12 students, they're 13-year-old students. We asked them to create images about New York City future and what that image going to look like, or how New York City would look like in climate change, considering climate change, and how do we adapt to them, and ask students to produce storyboards. So these are just 4 teams. They come up with different versions of stories of how climate could become a dystopia or a utopia version of New York City. So this is just a dry run of this approach, and we hope to use this in our future community engagement meetings to really empower people to start to see different or see alternative futures rather than focusing on the problem at hand. I'll just stop here.
So next we are going to continue talking about energy, and we'll hear from Professor Mohammed and Bob Kerr from the engineering school.
Thanks, Yana. So in alignment with the overarching community empowerment goal of the project, Objective 3 aims to develop and demonstrate community-based energy infrastructure with community participation, recognition of, and collaboration with stakeholders like the utility company and other public agencies that need to be involved in such projects. During year 1, we developed our community energy cell concept with a template of regulatory and market-based financial structure. We also developed technical aspects, including microgrid and distributed energy resource design, control, operation, and optimization. We completed a case study based in one of our targeted areas, West Harlem, specifically Community Board 9, to demonstrate the resiliency and energy justice benefits of the proposed energy cell concept. This case study resulted in a journal publication in Energy Reports and a couple of presentations at conferences, including a second best presentation that our students won at New York's Battery and Energy Storage Technology Consortium conference last year. Next, please, Yana. This slide delves into some of the details of the concept. So We start from the bottom. That box shows the electric distribution network. The blue box is called area substation. That's like the gateway of power from high voltage transmission down to distribution. These yellow lines coming out of the substation extend to cover an area, and buildings tap into these feeders or lines to get the power. Normally, the power comes downstream from the utility down to the substation, and then it goes to end customers. When the customers have distributed energy resources and flexible loads from buildings and electric vehicle chargers and solar and energy storage, the power can go backward. And our concept is to virtually aggregate some of these resources to form controllable entities with respect to the power grid. And then it's a win-win situation. These virtually aggregated resources can offload some of the control burden from the utility. They can be representing many DERs, so the grid doesn't have to deal with so many entities. And at the same time, being virtually aggregated, they represent enough power to compete in more lucrative markets so they can make more profit. They would be then virtually aggregated on the cloud. As you can see, this cloud internet e-business, and this is the connectivity part. And all the way on the top, that's the control part. So we basically trying to emulate what the utility does in its own control room, but this has to be done now at the community level, which comes with complexities and the challenges. The utility has access to, of course, more data, and including utility infrastructure data. We're trying to overcome the lack of data at the community level using artificial intelligence techniques and other smart ideas to be able to optimize the control without having all the data that the utility has. This concept aligns with the Department of Energy concepts around virtual aggregation and distributed energy resource management systems. If all goes well, to scale up, we envision the power grid to look something like this. At the bottom layer, this is the DER, distributed energy resource layer, with a rooftop solar, batteries, buildings. The layer that we're adding is the community energy cell layer. It has two parts: a virtual power plant and DER management system. Basically, the virtual power plant is the financial entity, DER management system is the controller. And when many of them are next to each other, they can do peer-to-peer energy transactions. They can have their own local market, and they can go directly to the power grid, to the wholesale market, and all the way on the top, there is the utility. And as I said, this DER management system concept is currently one of the important focuses of the Department of Energy. I'll stop here and hand it over to Michael to continue.
Our concepts enabled us to reach out in two directions. First direction, to community, to engage community support in pursuing the second direction, which was to develop financial support for what we see as a community-governed microgrid. As Ahmed was describing, really embodied in a community organization, actually a consortium of community organizations that would have a role in reaching out to the built environment, in West Harlem in this case, to do extensive retrofitting in compliance with New York City local law 97, which caps carbon going out to 2050. So quite radical reductions in energy use are required. And the Harlem virtual microgrid, West Harlem virtual microgrid, would be a vehicle towards this kind of retrofitting. So with the support and collaboration of Professor Rickenbacker and the Bond Center at Spitzer School of Architecture, we have significantly strengthened community support, following up on our first proposal try as we gear up for a second try. 3 years later, coming up this summer, we expect the same Connected Communities opportunity to be released by the Department of Energy. And we will have strengthened community support We've added commercial technology partner, at least two, a major engineering firm, PRC Engineering, which has an advanced grid solutions group that's worked on a variety of microgrid projects and has a couple of CUNY alumni in their leadership roles there. And also a technology product provider, Tantalus Engineering, Tantalus Metering, which has done a variety of rural electric projects, rural co-op electric projects. And we think that co-op experience is directly transferable into the urban environment. And we've also added workforce in renewing our proposal thinking. We are adding a strengthened workforce development element. You can hear more about this at the CUNY Energy Conference on March 28th. If you could go back a slide. So this slide just gives you a better idea of some of the state of the geographical area we're looking at. City College, interestingly, is on the same subgrid as Columbia University to the south and as the North River Power Plant to the west. That North River plant has recently just commissioned a 10 megawatt cogeneration plant fueled by biogas, regenerated biogas. So it provides an interesting, very interesting resource to go along with the distributed solar resource that's been developed throughout the neighborhood as well. And we would look to coordinate these things to participate, as Professor Mohammed suggested, coordinate these resources along with other buildings into the commercial markets, commercial energy markets, for the benefit of the community. Next slide. And we've also pursued instructional activities. In the first year, we applied and won a CUNY Green Capital Award that enabled simulation hardware and software to be purchased. That's in the process of being designed for installation now. In the second year, we set up a retrofit lab that is presently supporting the development of Objective 4 white paper, as well as instructional activities with this new lab facilities. And we have applied for additional CUNY Green Cap funding in a subsequent second round. Next slide. So our fourth objective is to create a white paper that really takes forward Objective 3's concepts to show a path for integrating affordable housing with low carbon construction. And there we will rely in part on Professor Rickenbacher's concepts about density and how increased density can support affordable housing while achieving energy goals at the same time. The core concept is that there will have to be extensive retrofitting of buildings in the West Harlem neighborhood. And as part of that retrofitting, we will address indoor air quality and associated health conditions that have become an additional focus of our ongoing research. So with that, I'll pass it on to our next objectives.
Okay, so that's a great segue to our next presenter, Professor Ramamurthy, who is going to talk to us about our current work on air quality.
Thanks, Yana. Okay, so we are doing a lot of work related to understanding how air quality varies in the city, both outdoors as well as indoor. And air quality, as opposed to something like temperature, is very trace conditions. So basically, what it means is like the variation with respect to space is like very, very high. So this last summer, we partnered with NOAA's CSL lab, our chemical science lab, and then NASA to understand street level air quality in New York City. So we had about like 5 or 6 different students who had this backpack and carried these sensors to measure particulate matter as well as ozone at different neighborhoods in the street. So this experiment lasted for almost like a whole month, and we covered a majority of neighborhoods in Manhattan and then some neighborhoods in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. The main idea for this experiment is like, apart from understanding what the street level variability of these pollutants are, is also to actually forecast them. So in my lab, we're developing a model to do urban air quality at high spatial resolution. So we're using this data collected in order to validate our model and also understand some of the phenomena. And then NASA just launched a satellite last year. It's not completely public yet. And this satellite will be one of the first one to actually do air quality at potentially urban scales. So we're working with their team in order to validate the product. So what you guys see here on the left-hand side, the first 2 graphs, the bigger pixels are our model data. And then the blue dots there show the walking path. And then on the right-hand side, so you can see like the model is not that great, but but this is something like we need to work on. And then on the right-hand side, this is actually the satellite data, and then we're comparing it to the walks, and you could see the satellite data is not doing that well. But this is an ongoing work, and I also would like to say, like last week, last Friday, we installed sensors in an HDFC building in the Lower East Side in New York City. So we were working with this community engagement group called the Cooper Square Committee, and they've been here since the 1970s. They help a lot of these HDFCs, particularly in the Lower Manhattan, in order to do necessary weatherization work and also help them maintain their buildings. And so with the help of them, we installed about like sensors in almost like 5 or 6 different houses, and then in the lobby area, basement, and we are going to be taking data for at least the next 6 months to 1 year. And we're also going to install a sensor outside. So we're going to learn more about the connection between indoor and outdoor air quality. And so, potentially we can actually model indoor air quality within our existing modeling framework. Yep.
Thanks, Pratap. And next, we'll continue talking about our community engagement around climate and environment with Professor Chen.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about a particular field site, which I think compared to, for example, East Harlem, which was referenced earlier in the presentation, is known for having a number of community-based organizations and a high-level activism. So it could serve as a model for the rest of New York City in terms of if people want to generate change, and especially in terms of climate resiliency, this kind of site would be a good model for that. Relationships with this site actually started way back in fall 2011, preceding all these efforts, but as part of this was an individual research project I had, and I had stopped the project to focus on another research project. But before that, you can see through the timeline on the right of the slide, one of the colleagues that had invited me into that particular research site, it's a moderate income housing known as Mitchell-Lama housing. It's where residents own their housing. They're shareholders in a cooperative. She invited me in to look at their efforts to set up a naturally occurring retirement community, which is a program which would have a social worker and a nurse. So prior to that effort, we had participated in community-based participatory research training in what was then known as the Division of Social Sciences, which is now the Colin Powell School. And through that, this actually resulted in us coming back in the summer of 2023 after they were able to formally set up a NORC program with the city. The Department for the Aging has funded a NORC program there, which enables them to have a nurse on site to serve the estimated maybe about almost 1,000 residents in the area who are age 65 or above. So we brought in several students who, 4 students who I had taught in my methods class. They were funded through the CRV and also participated in the ORCA summer training program, which also allowed them, as you'll see on another slide, to do a presentation. So Yana and myself were paired as mentors with 2 pairs of undergraduates. So mind you, the reason we started with this scale is this particular community has been very, very careful about COVID. They still wear masks at the NORC program, for example. And I wanted to see, because, especially since many organizations had been closed, right, to researchers or people who were not members of that organization. I wanted to see what it would be like at this time point in terms of having some sort of activity together. And we were one of the first universities to re-enter this space. I don't know if we're quite post-pandemic yet, but during this time period. So you can see here, our undergraduates actually got a crash course in climate resiliency. The picture you see on the right was actually on that really bad air quality day. So we made several visits. They actually were visiting the site regularly, working with the NORC program, developing a survey, for example, to be given to residents. And you can see that this is an image of the complex itself. Yana, could you advance the next slide? And as I mentioned earlier, I felt this was a good site for our students to learn from, and also for us to launch our community engagement to see how we could interface with the community, many of whom have been socially isolated. Many folks have not been working in the same kind of environments as before. So trying to rebuild trust and community engagement, and the CRV project allowed us to start to reestablish relationships with community partners, as well as help undergraduates understand what it's like to do research around multiple stakeholders' interests. They got to see up front what it's like to negotiate different groups or different individual persons who may have different kinds of goals for what they would like to see happen in their community. This effort was successful enough that our community partners actually approached us and asked us to return to focus on climate resiliency. So if you click on the next slide, Yana. So we did do that. Let me just hold up. So these are pictures, so you can go back. Yeah, these are pictures that show the kind of culminating presentation the students had on their poster presentations at the Great Hall at CCNY. So 2 of our community partners came out to actually look at the poster presentations, as you see here. So Yana, can you advance one more slide? So if you play the clip. So one of the major changes that this community went through is they've constructed a multi-million-dollar project. They were a community that was impacted by Hurricane Sandy. They didn't have the full flooding that the NYCHA houses had that were closer to the river, but they did have their power knocked out for more than a week. And if you can imagine trying to go to the 21st floor with no elevator, and plus your plumbing doesn't work because that requires a pump, for example. And so they instituted this new project where they constructed a co-generator, which is supposed to generate emergency power and lighting, enough power to generate, to allow elevators to operate. This meant digging up a whole part of the grounds of Mazurk Towers in order to construct this room that you see here with the heavy machinery. And so the community partner wanted us to return, and they wanted in particular landscape architecture students to come in and help reimagine the site in terms of what they could do to prepare for future years. Their efforts have been mostly ad hoc before. Individual gardeners might develop their own little parts of the site. So Zihao and I came back in December. It was Zihao's first visit, my return visit, and we continued site visits through February. We brought along several landscape architecture students, as you can see here. to visit the site to see what kinds of plantings and what kinds of things could be done, as well as have individual conversations with shareholders. This shared space, that's a large courtyard space, is an area that had been closed off during the pandemic, because that's when the construction was happening for several years. And until now, the completion of the project, residents didn't have full access to the site. So now they're returning to gardening, exercise. The younger kids have play, recreation. There's lots of park benches now, a place to rest in between house activities, and there's even housing for feral cats that have been there for a while. So it's a place that also has annual community building events, activities like a summer barbecue, and you can see the video here showing the Chinese Lunar New Year lion dance. These kind of efforts actually allow the community to engage and to think about what they want for their community. So can we advance the slide? So one of the things we were asked to do, and Zihao was the one who corralled the landscape architecture students to develop 3 options for a particular space that the community has focused on, which is a splash pad area, an area that had been closed down due to the cogeneration construction. There was some design changes, designs that were made that they wanted to change. And so the architecture students came through, looked at the site, and developed 3 options for making the area more environmentally friendly and aesthetically also a place that, you know, people could develop connections. And you can see 3 of the options here. The one on the right was the one that was modified based on input from the general manager and 2 of the board members. The items on the left are things that the community could go towards as they learn more about community resiliency. So they're continuing to discuss these options. If you're going to go to the next slide, Zihao and his students also put together some kind of like a guide to help them think through their site. Again, they were very focused on this particular area, but we will return. We're continuing to discuss what to do with the rest of the area. So you can see the over, in the previous one, you could see different images of the site, right? The overhead site. The middle blue dot is a splash pad where kids are supposed to be able to play with the water during the summer. If you can go to the next slide, Yana. So one of the things that was a concern of that for them is they had contractors had built in a curb, and then a kid tripped and fell and chipped a tooth. So they're trying to think, well, should we do something to remediate this or not? And so Zihao and his students put together several possibilities for shareholders to consider. So let's see what they do with these ideas. And again, the idea here is to try to present ideas so that the shareholders can decide what they might do other than like the very simple option, which some of them were, at least 1 or 2 were advocating for just making it entirely asphalt, which, as you can imagine, is probably not the most environmentally friendly option or sustainable option. So Yana, if you can advance, thank you. So Zihao and his students have started the process of putting together a book. You can see these really great images that one of the students designed of like thinking through how they might use their space in a more environmentally sustainable way. So for example, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the uppermost little slice up there you can see is people gardening and developing like topiaries, for example. So really, this is a way of helping shareholders think through things rather than just going back to what they had before, really thinking through how they might transform their environment to allow for environmental resiliency, as well as accommodate climate change, which, according to Zihao, this particular area has been rezoned due to climate change. So let's go to the next slide. So
that's to me, but if you want to,
yes, so I'll just say this is a project in process. So as Zihao and I and the students have learned, it's very politically fraught, right? So trying to work with different stakeholders, I think, you know, this has been a good kind of experience to think through how to work with communities, especially when they have different kinds of ideas about possibilities. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine. So I will try to just wrap up very quickly because I know we're running out of time. So in addition to all of the very deep community engagement that we just heard about from Catherine, Zihao, and Pratap, as well as the energy team, we've also participated in a lot of different community events that are actually leading to new funding opportunities and research opportunities, and we hope to tell you about them next year. We have also programmed and sponsored a full day of educational activities to celebrate GIS Day at City College. A total of 23 undergraduate students, graduate students, and staff participated in the event, and Esri, who's the developer of ArcGIS, sent a representative. Our eventual goal here is to develop some open educational resources for our students and community members. So obviously, where are we going with this? We do eventually want to become self-sustaining because and to that effect, we have submitted a total of 8 proposals with 3 more under preparation. And here I would like to thank the Office of Grants and Sponsored Research for working with us on these submissions. I would also like to thank the CRV for funding us. And why is that? Those would not have been feasible without the CRV funds, because the CRV funds funded convergent research, pilot research findings, and community engagement that was necessary for every single one of those proposals. And what's particularly, I think, has been gratifying is that those proposals are mostly with community members. So the funding that we have received has allowed for us to reach out to existing and new partners and make sure that we tell them that City College is there for them so that we can work in the future on not only proposals, but also future research initiatives. Most of our budget these past few years have went to team personnel. So I see the CRV funding as really an opportunity for the college to invest in its not only faculty, but also students. We've grown a lot over the last few years and have added many new PhD students, master's students, and undergraduate students, not only through opportunities to involve them as paid research assistants on our projects, but also through various other capstone opportunities that I think most of my colleagues, or actually all of them, are involved in some kind of mentoring that has come out of the CRV project. We've published 4 articles that have come directly out of interdisciplinary research that we've started as part of the CRV. We've presented at conferences and have several manuscripts that have already are in the pipeline for publication. Let's see. So I'll just tell you what we plan to do over the next year as I wrap up. So we plan to continue developing our web platform for community dialogue and visualizations by collecting feedback on its usability from community members. We're also expanding our community partnerships in terms of community visioning sessions. We're starting a community mapping project with React of Uptown Manhattan. And we're also going to submit quite a large proposal to the NSF through their growing convergence research opportunity. We're continuing to build our community energy cell project by collecting community feedback and by submitting another large energy proposal to the US Department of Energy. We are in the data collection process of our community sensing and environmental justice pillar of our work. And we are working with community partners on various very exciting local opportunities, such as a proposed maximum indoor temperature legislation for New York City and building electrification for better indoor air. And we continue to pioneer convergent science and community engagement through interdisciplinary science and community collaboration. And then one more thank you. So I'd like to thank Dr. Wesson for her vision in securing the funding for the CRV and shepherding our team over the first year of the initiative. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Shi for his support and guidance over that first year. We're also grateful to be currently working with Dr. Ghosh and Dr. Weissman as we embark on the second year of our project. Thanks.
Yana, thank you for your presentation and the team. Do you mind go back to the page 48 about the funding? I noticed that the MRI is still pending. You haven't heard back from NSF regarding their decision yet? 48.
Yeah, I don't think we got the MRI. No, they haven't like really declined it, but I don't think we got it. It's been too long.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's just pending on the website, so we have not heard anything either way. I think that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And you submitted a B2 proposal this last year? Okay, that's great. Okay.
So the B2 proposal, the people who are on that team is Catherine, Pratap, Shakila is on it too. I think I saw her here, and then a colleague from anthropology and another colleague from biology at Brooklyn College. So we're waiting to hear on that, but that B2 proposal is on our work on housing and environmental justice. So it's directly related to what we've done so far here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The other thing is for Sean, talking about the EDI, is there any paper or sites where we can where I can go and learn more about it?
So
how it's being formulated?
Right. So currently, Alan, we're in the beta stage right now, and we are in talks with primarily the City Council Speakers Planning Group, who are guiding us on some of the things that they would like to see, since ultimately we think this is ideally situated as a citywide tool. So we are both in the process of looking for additional funding to continue to build this out. We have submitted applications to several foundations. Feedback has been quite positive. Curiously enough, I will share that in one evaluation, they very much loved the project, but felt that we had enough support from CUNY and City College for some of the other applications. So we're working to dispel that notion as we continue to go forward with additional funding opportunities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
That's all for me.
I think maybe Dr. Ghosh is first, and then Dr. Valdez.
Couple of things. I mean, this was very impressive. Have you guys, one observation, I mean, you know, I wouldn't be so disheartened about the MRI yet, because the NSF just got its budget last week. Its financial year 24 budget, and how it's going to get distributed to the various directorates hasn't been decided and will not be for the next couple of weeks. So you may still have a chance. So I wouldn't be that negative as of yet. The second question is, I mean, this is a lot of work, you know, across many scales, involving all kinds of people. And, you know, it's good that you are applying for federal funding, but, you know, have you sort of tried to interface with potential donors or foundations who could sort of, you know, you could directly target, you know, and who can actually get you, perhaps not the $40 million, you know, which you've asked for from the federal government, but sort of get you through a few more years of this, right? Because you're going to enter the last couple of years of your CRV funding, right? Yeah.
In terms of that, I think you guys probably want to, excuse me, keep an eye on the announcement about the PIT-UN. PIT stands for Public Interest Technology, and UN stand for University Network. I believe it was funded by a nonprofit foundation, and they have been supporting some different type of work. And so if you see and CUNY is being a member of it. So if you see the announcement for the PIT-UN, pay attention to that. Maybe there can be some small, but sometimes is still in the 200K range potentials.
And one last question, if Vanessa will indulge me. Sorry. So with these large convergent grants, have you guys had a chance to talk to program directors, either through Zoom as a group, or taking a trip to Alexandria? Perhaps doing, I shouldn't use the word lobbying, potentially helps with these sorts of things. So have you considered doing that? And if you do want to do that, how can we help? Right.
Okay, so just very quickly, I think we'll be very interested to think more about private foundation funding. I know Sean has done a lot of work actually on that, so we do have expertise on the team. So that would be definitely something that would be great, and I think that's a great idea. The second thing about the convergence research, so Xingang is actually just went to a meeting about it, or a seminar about it at the NSF, and we're getting some comments on our proposal through the internal review process of the Research Foundation. But it would be great to have more support on this. So for example, the proposal to the Build and Broaden program came because Catherine met the program director at the American Sociological Association annual meeting, and the Office of Research invited the program director to come here to City College to present. So that's another thing. I would not have applied for this program if the program director did not come to City College to present to us so that we can talk about his priorities. So I think that, yeah, that's a great idea around lobbying, even though it's not, but that's how it works at NSF. You have to socialize your proposal with the program director. So thank you, and we want to talk more about those opportunities. But Vanessa, are you still here? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still here. So first I want to thank you all for this presentation and for just the amount of work. I remember this moment last year because I got a text from Tony saying, we need to include CRV. You need to talk to the team Climate Solidarity, which was then followed by my email to you, Yana, about an email about your website. So I just wanted to pick up on going into or highlighting another audience, right? Part of what you were saying for a number of points about community engagement, and not just the groups you're working with, be it the, CB9, We Act, other groups, but I also want to highlight how one of the things that the initiative, the Harlem 2032 initiative, which is the primary one of my office, is about producing a briefing booklet for stakeholders that include not only policymakers, but also our community members. And so whether it's talking to you, Yana, or some subset of the entire group or the entire group, I would like to posit a kind of translational elements to this work, be it in brief white papers, right? Because that's the whole purpose of it is, and this is the first time I'm saying out loud to a group of researchers but I will be doing this throughout the college, right? Like just really emphasizing white papers that again, translate or make more accessible the work that you're doing, because this is incredible work. How do you get someone who just lives on 137th and 7th to be interested in this? So I just wanted to say that out loud.
I think that's a great idea. Would love to collaborate with your office on this. I know that this is some of the goals that we have had for our website, and we're still talking through what it would take to present what is in some cases very technical work, but very important and community engaged work to people in our community. So please email me. Let's put a meeting on the calendar, and I would love to not only me to speak with you, but also my colleagues as well, to talk through how we can deepen our already existing ties to the Harlem 2032 initiative.
Thank you. And also, I do want to say one of the things that I'm doing with someone else in this community is we're actually doing presentations at local libraries, at Maisels, because they have a group there that's working with BARD and taking classes. And so really that's the other thing I'm doing, is like creating a list of spaces whereby if you want to present at community centers, not just in, you know, in the towers that you suggested, right? But, you know, like in Riverside State Park, or so all of that is what my office is working on as a resource for, again, dissemination of the work that takes place on this campus. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate this offer, and we'll take you up on it.
There you go.
Okay, I think maybe now is the time to end, but unless someone else has a question, but I'd like to thank you all for sticking with us and for all of your support. We really do feel supported by everyone here who has had a role to play in our project. So thank you for sticking with us, and for for funding, but also for all of your great ideas about how we can make this even more impactful as a community inspired research project.
Thank you for all the efforts.